In today's video, I want to talk about food planning, in particular how triggering just the act of planning what you're going to eat can be if you're someone who struggles with binging. And yet, most reputable treatment plans will emphasize the importance of planning food. Also, our lives are often set up in a way that we need to be able to plan what we're going to eat. We need to be able to anticipate what we might eat at particular times of the day. And yet, isn't food planning so closely associated with dieting and trying to get it right? And in order to plan, we have to use our thinking mind and our decision-making mind to figure out what we're going to eat. But when we have a lot of disordered thinking and our emotions are all over the place when it comes to our eating, that can be particularly difficult. The first treatment or professional help that I sought for my binge eating was cognitive behavioral therapy. And when I started it, I met this lovely therapist who also had a history of binge eating. And the first thing I was told was how I needed to plan my breakfast, lunch, dinner, and 3 snacks and prioritize protein and nutritious foods. Part of me was thinking, well, if I was able to just stick to these 3 meals a day and eat nutritiously, I wouldn't be here. So there was some doubt in my mind about my capabilities, but I was quite excited about starting treatment at the same time because I was desperate to recover and I was willing to do anything. And I thought, if I have a professional person there who knows all about helping people to stop binge eating, all I have to do is do everything she tells me to do, and then I'll be free of this problem forever. What I didn't know at the time was it was going to be another 9 years before I managed to get a handle on this binge eating problem. For me, the idea of planning my food felt like code for control. It felt like what I was being told is you just need to control your food. And so I planned my meals. And also, you're told in the treatment program that even if you binge, you still have to eat your next meal. So in that time, 7 or 8 weeks, I think, that I did the program for, I was gaining even more weight because I was eating these 3 meals a day, I was having my 3 snacks, and I was still binging on top of that. And I shared this part before, how I think it was week 7 or something like that, as I was leaving, because my binging hadn't reduced, she says to me, I really want you to try this week, Sarah. And I remember feeling like it reaffirmed something so deep in me that felt like the reason why I couldn't stop this binging was I just must not be trying hard enough. So the more upset and overwhelmed I became, the more black and white I became about trying to recover, which actually ended up setting me back. And I think there's a couple of reasons why the food planning didn't reduce my binging at this stage for me. I think there was more going on for me than just trying to restrict or trying to lose weight. I never did any particular significant restriction, although I was gaining weight, and of course I was distressed about that at the time, so I was trying to lose weight. But what that meant is when I was planning my food, and planning my 3 meals a day and my snacks, in my mind I was trying to keep it under a certain calorie count. I was trying to plan my meals in probably quite a diet culture way. And sure, the therapist did say to me, are you sure this is satisfying for you? And I would insist that it was, and then no more was said about it. For example, one of my breakfasts that I was having at the time, I would have some bran flakes, not a lot of them, and I would have a Muller Light yogurt, and then I would have 2 egg whites to add the protein in. Now, I would have sworn blind at the time that that was absolutely enough for me for breakfast. I now know that was probably less than 300 calories, and that would not have been enough breakfast for me. Knowing what I know now from a place where I have healed my appetite and I'm much more in touch with my natural hunger. So this was a big part of the problem with my attempts to food plan, and I see this now with people I work with too, is that if you are trying to plan your food, chances are what you think is the amount of food that you need may not be accurate. The other thing that it brought up for me around planning was that at the time I didn't have the capacity to be able to balance this idea of planning and permission. So sure, I was being told, yeah, you may eat more than what's on your food plan, but as I heard it, the ideal was to try to stick to my food plan and not be eating anything off plan, which straight away got my rebel going because it felt like I didn't have any freedom or choices around food. It often felt like a bit of a mix for me because part of me just wanted to be locked up in a room where someone just fed me food through a hatch so I didn't have to try and figure out these food decisions. And another part of me wanted to be free to eat whatever she wanted, and I couldn't seem to find a middle ground between the two. And the other thing that happened as well with starting CBT was that it felt the same as that day one of a diet. And the body remembers, the nervous system remembers that day one feeling where there is some excitement, but there is also this sense of like, this is it from now on. This is going to be my life forever. It has to look like this. And depending on your history of dieting, there could be a part of you that would really freak out at that feeling because your nervous system is anticipating what's going to happen next, even if you are cognitively telling yourself it's okay because this time's going to be different. But also for some people, that going into planning, even if initially you're trying to plan enough food, can be a slippery slope into restriction as you keep tweaking and cutting back and cutting back. And that, for many people who, especially those who go in and out of the binge restrict cycle, the restriction part is as compulsive as the binging. It's not even a choice to restrict. They can be pulled into it in a very, I want to say like an out of control way, as in they haven't made a free choice. It can be sneaky. The part of you that knows that, again, might push back or rebel against the idea of planning. So, given that we do probably need to plan our food to some degree, what can we actually do? We need to reframe this idea of planning. I don't even like the word food plan or food planning. I have, as I hear those words, like I have an aversion to that word in my body. So structure worked quite well for me, idea of having a bit of structure around food. But I also like the idea of the word rhythm, that we're trying to get into a rhythm. If you struggle with disordered eating and binging, your eating, chances are it's quite chaotic. It's all over the place. You're eating and then you're not eating, or then you're eating like this and then you're eating like that. And there's no pattern or sense of rhythm. And our bodies like rhythm. Our bodies tend to run in cycles. And so when the body can predict when food is coming, it feels safer and it feels calmer. So rather than thinking about it as, oh, I have to plan everything I'm going to eat, thinking about it as, I need to try and get into a rhythm with food, because that is going to help to regulate my appetite and reduce those binge urges. The other thing that is particularly important for me as well is I cannot say to myself, right, eat less of this, because there's a part of me that gets really triggered when I'm thinking about what I'm not eating or can't or shouldn't. That kind of, even now when I've been recovered for a number of years, that kind of thinking or that kind of, those kind of intentions of food are very problematic for me. It's the first thing that's going to throw my appetite out of whack. And this is how we marry the rhythm with also a sense of permission. So it could be a case of, okay, these are the meals that I'm going to have, and I'm going to try and make them filling and satisfying. And if I want something else, I'm allowed to have something else. I focused on more about how I ate that something else. Because if I just said, okay, I'm going to have my meals and then it doesn't matter what I have, maybe that would have worked, maybe that wouldn't have worked. But what did work for me was to say, okay, like have your meals, make sure your meals have got some protein and fiber in, and then if you want something else, you can absolutely have it. Just do your best to try and enjoy it, to really try and enjoy the food itself. Because part of my problem with food is that I used food to check out and numb. So let's say I had a meal, but then I had a craving for something sweet, I would feel conflicted about that. And because I felt conflicted about that, I didn't want to be present with it. And so because I didn't want to be present with it, I had to completely switch off, and then I could end up eating a lot more. The other part with food planning is when you know tomorrow you're not restricting, you're still going to have plenty of foods that you can look forward to, it helps to reduce the Last Supper eating, which you may have heard of before. Last Supper eating is that idea of, okay, tomorrow I'm going to eat less, or I'm going to be good, or I'm going to cut this out. So this is my Last Supper. This is my last chance to eat in this way, because from tomorrow I'm going to be different. So getting into a rhythm or having a plan or having a structure that just works for you as your baseline, the idea is to not turn it into something that feels like you're on or off the wagon. Planning your food cannot be about planning to be perfect, because the minute you feel like you've messed up, the Last Supper eating is going to come in again, because you've already messed up. Let's just have the Last Supper eating, because tomorrow I'll get it right. I'm a big fan as well of, when you are planning, including foods that in the intuitive eating world we call fun foods. So it's the kind of foods that we eat just because they taste good. They might not have the highest nutritional value, but we enjoy eating them when we're not feeling really guilty about it, of course. But if you actually plan some of these foods in, again, this reduces the last supper eating. Sometimes people will plan, but they have no idea the next time they're going to have chocolate. So they wait till they really, really crave the chocolate. And then when they have it, it's that same experience of feeling like you're giving into a binge urge. The desire for it has got so high that when you have it, it feels kind of out of control. And that feeling of being out of control can go on to trigger a binge as well, as can just the deprivation mindset. I think if you're trying to plan, create a structure or create a rhythm, it's noticing how the different parts of you are reacting. How's your rebel reacting? Is there a part of you that doesn't feel free to make choices? And is there a way to incorporate that into your structure so that there is some flexibility and foods that you look forward to eating? How's the part of you that can be quite black and white in your approach to food? How's that part reacting? That's the part that's probably going to feel quite uncomfortable when you are trying to create a more fluid structure. So it's knowing that, okay, my perfectionism or my black and white thinking is going to be challenged in this process. You're anticipating it's going to be challenged, and that part needs some reassurance about why you're trying to do this. And watch out for the good girl or the good boy or the good person, the part of us that wants to be compliant because it just feels good to get it right and to stick to the rules. So this is particularly something that might happen if you are in a diet club where you have some accountability. Or even for me, when I was working with that CBT therapist, I was doing my best to try to be a compliant client. Well, that's fun to say, but it also meant that part of the reason I was doing it was because I'm trying to show her that I can do it and show her that I'm going to be a good client that does what she says, so that what? Maybe it kind of ties in with the part that feels like, well, if I'm doing it right, then I'm going to get the results that I want. And then the other part that you need to look out for in terms of how this part reacts to whatever it is that you're trying to plan, that is the part that might want to lose weight. The problem was whenever I had a food plan that was about, you know, if I stuck to this food plan, I would be in a deficit and I would lose weight. It meant that there couldn't be the flexibility because I would feel stressed out and conflicted if I wanted to eat more than what I had planned to eat. And a food plan doesn't have to be all your meals look like this. A food plan could just be having a few options. So it could be, okay, at lunchtime I'm going to have this, this or this. It's having some snacks in that maybe you might enjoy. Part of the benefits of deciding ahead of time is to reduce the number of decisions you have to make throughout the day around food. If you're somebody who already feels like you think about food 24/7, part of the idea behind this is to try to give you a bit of mental space because the decision was already made, or you only have to choose between a couple of things. Rather than each time you're hungry going, okay, I'll go to the shops, but what am I going to get? And you have a whole store to choose from. Don't get me wrong, if that works for you, crack on. But that was my approach to intuitive eating for the longest time, was actually not having a plan, just trying to figure out what I felt like as I went along, because I thought I'm supposed to listen to my body. That's what intuitive eating is. But the thing is, our bodies don't speak. They don't have a language. So they speak in sensations, but our mind has to interpret what's going on in their body. So we have to be able to use our thinking, our critical thinking and decision-making capacities to decide what to eat. But when we always leave it till the actual moment when we're hungry, we're more likely to need or want something that's going to be available to us quicker because we don't want to spend time preparing anything. Or maybe we've got a little bit too far past hunger, so now we want to eat more, or we're craving higher calorie foods because our brains are saying that we need more energy. And I have a video that might help you out if you're trying to figure out how to even begin this planning or creating a rhythm around food. You may want to watch this video, which is 5 gentle nutrition tips for people who struggle with binge eating. And I love the word gentle there because I think gentleness is how we start to soften the black and white perfectionistic thinking. Anyway, I'll leave it there for now. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next